So many apples, so little time. It's like basic apple. It's like one of my least favorite apples. And that one's going to the dogs. Dog approved. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This week we're going to be trying all different varieties of apples. The first one we're trying is a Fuji apple. It's got like a nice like kind of pink to red kind of color on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a nice level of like sweetness and crunchiness to it. Mm-hmm. It's like kind of the perfect kind of just like eating apple, I would describe it as. And it's like the skin is just as good as like the inside. It's not overly sweet, but it is nice and crisp. Yeah,
it definitely has more of that crispness to it, but it doesn't have any of that sourness that you think with like greener apples, but it's not too sweet. So yeah, this is like a really good apple just to have as an eating apple. The next one we're trying is a Rave apple. I'm not as familiar with this one. This one sounds like it's one of those new age apples.
Yeah, maybe like a hybrid apple.
Yeah, that's what a lot of them are these days. So curious to see what this one tastes like.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually had a Rave apple.
No.
All right, so here's the Rave apple. It's got kind of like a nice like red and some yellowish. Mm-hmm. Not like green, but more on the yellow scale on the skin. It's got a very nice crunch to it.
It's very crisp. It is sweeter than the Fuji apple, I would say. They kind of have like more complex sweetness. It's not just sugar. Kind of has like appley mix to it for the flavor. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, this is nice. I really like the like texture of it because it is just like that good. Like when you bite into it, it's got that strong crispiness that comes along with it, and it's got a really nice flavor. I've had this flavor in an apple, another variety of apple. I can't think of it, so that's probably what the other half of it is. And if it is a hybrid, I'll put it on the screen right now.
Yeah, no, this one's another solid, really good eating apple. Not too sweet. Got a nice crunch to it.
I bet this variety of apple, based on its like flavor, and would be probably pretty good for making cider.
Oh yeah. The next apple we're trying is the classic Granny Smith apple.
Usually a pretty tart apple.
Well, the kids like green apple.
I don't think we've found an apple they don't like yet.
No. Yeah, so this is your classic Granny Smith apple when you think of green apples.
This one's not as like sour as it normally is. But it tastes fine. It just tastes like Granny Smith. It's kind of like crispy, tart, more on the like acidic, sour side of apples. That's why these are pretty good for baking because they have that balance to add for sugar.
I mean, it's kind of your classic Granny Smith apple. You know what you're going to get with it. It's a really good variety for having more of that sour characteristics than having that sweet, but it's still really crisp. The next one we're trying is the Macintosh apple. Maybe Steve Jobs really liked this type of apple. So yeah, this one has like a nice deep red kind of skin.
I mean, my only complaint with Macintosh sometimes when they're not perfectly ripe or overripe is they can kind of be mealy.
Yeah, this one's not that crispness that we've been getting from other ones, so it's lacking a crunch. So it has a good flavor profile, it's just not crisp.
Yeah, and it's got kind of like the exterior of the skin is a little bit more waxy, I would say, compared to some of the other ones. I mean, it's still one of my favorite apples, especially when you can get it like in season in like New England where they're typically from. This one just like just a titch beyond like where it should be.
Yeah, I would say this one, it's still on the sweeter side of things. It's just not as crisp, and it can be more of a hit and miss kind of apple depending where you're at. Next one we're trying is Pink Lady. I always like the color on these ones. These ones have like a gorgeous like pink yellow hue. So yeah, these are pretty apples.
Here's Pink Lady. This one's not very good.
No.
It's really crunchy, but it's got
very crunchy. I would say it's not very juicy.
No.
It's got a good sugar profile to it, so it is like on the sweeter side. But because it's lacking that sweetness, the crunch is just, or lacking the moisture, that crunch is just like almost overpowering for how crisp it is.
Yeah, and there's not like a whole lot of like apple-y notes either in this specific one.
Yeah, so this one could have just been an out-of-season apple, or how it is for this variety, but I'd say it's, compared to the other ones we've had, this one's not as good. So the next one we're trying is Cosmic Crisp. This one's definitely a hybrid. I've heard about this one before. It's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever had it before.
No. They usually stick to the classics.
Yeah. It's got a good like bite to it.
Yeah, I would say this has like a nice crispness to it, but because it is more juicy, it has like a nice blend of texture to it. It's also not too sweet, and it's got more like robust apple profile to it. So it's not just one note. So this one's actually a pretty good variety of apple.
Yeah. I mean, I like the texture. I think is like what's really the like main component that I really like about the apple. I mean, the skin, everything is pretty good.
Yeah, I would say this is, again, another really good just eating apple.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
The next one we're trying is called Sweetango.
Never had this one. This is
Yeah,
something
no.
new at the grocery store, so I got the rest of them. This just reminds me of store-bought apple juice. Like that flavor that you get from just like right off the shelf. That's what this apple tastes like.
Yeah, it's got like a little bit of that like tartness to it, but it's still got that sweetness. It's really crisp and juicy. Yeah, this is a really good variety of apple.
Yeah, because it just tastes like the essence of apple juice, and it's got the crunch to go with it. So
Yeah, no, this one's really good. The next one we're trying is Envy. It's from New Zealand. That's an interesting flavor.
yeah, it's almost got like a similar flavor to like a Fuji apple,
Oh, yeah.
but it's way more like crisp.
Yeah, it's almost like verging to that kind of like sweet side, but it's like kind of like honey.
This is good.
It is a very different tasting apple, but like really good.
Yeah.
Because it's like a lot of the other ones that we've tried are kind of just varieties of each other. So they're all kind of staying in that same taste like apple juice, sweetness, you know, a little bit tartness, crisp. This has a completely different flavor to it.
Yeah, I like this one. It is, again, as you said, just completely different. And
Yeah, I wonder how this one would be as a pie.
Ooh,
Just
yeah.
because it has such a different apple flavor to it compared to a lot of the other apples we've been trying. So this one could make a really good desserts or something.
Yeah, but you could just back off on a little bit of sugar, and the flavor of the apple would really shine through.
Yeah, no, this one's a really good one. Okay, the next one we're trying is the Gala apple. This one's from Colorado.
It's definitely more like sweeter than the last one we just tried. Again, they all got pretty nice consistency of like the crunch to it is really nice.
Yeah, I would say this one's less crisp and crunchy than the other ones we've had, but it's definitely more juicy.
Yeah.
So it has a little bit, you know, a little different flavor profile than the others, but it's a really, again, a really solid apple. Not too sweet. Probably be really good, again, in like baked goods or just eating it for itself because it's got a good flavor profile.
Yeah, I'd say this is probably a solid eating apple, like slicing it up and eating it with something. I like the texture. It's a little bit more on the milder side in terms of the intensity of the sweetness, which makes it nice. So you can eat a couple of them if you wanted to.
All right, the next one we're trying is a Honey Crisp from Colorado. Yeah, this one is very sweet, which is expected with a Honey Crisp. It does have a good amount of like juiciness to it and is fairly crisp, really sweet.
Yeah, it just feels like you turned up the sweetness to like 12 on the apple side, and it's just like sweeter than any of the others we had. Luckily, it does have a good texture to kind of balance it out, but overall, this just feels like way too sweet for an apple.
Yeah, it's kind of on the sweetness. It doesn't have that like complex flavor profile of different apples that we've tried. It's very much one note of sweet. So this might be a very good one to put in like a baked good, where it's like you can cut down on how much sugar you add to it and add in other flavors to let it shine through. Having this as just like an eating apple might be a little too sweet and kind of boring after a while because it is just one note of sweetness.
Yeah, that's why I typically shy away from it because it's just overly sweet and not like apple-y. Just sugar content.
Yeah. Okay, the next one we're trying is a Snapdragon.
Again, this is definitely one I don't think I've ever had.
No, it's one of the like newer varieties that they have.
This one definitely tastes different than the other ones. It's got a nice crunch to it. It's not overly sweet especially compared to the last one we just tried, the Honey Crisp.
Yeah, I would say it has got a nice good crunch to it. It has a good amount of juiciness to it, so it's not too dry. And then the flavor profile, it has more of that, not quite that apple juice flavor that we had before, but it is more complex than compared to the Honey Crisp that we just had.
Yeah.
So again, this would be a good eating apple, you know, kind of run-of-the-mill, nothing real wild about it, but pretty decent.
Yeah, that's what I would agree. I think it's just like kind of just a regular eating apple. I mean, I think for me, trying all of these, there's kind of subtleties between the different ones. I think just for me in general, I think the most surprising, the one I'd probably go back for would be this Envy one from New Zealand. Because it just has such a unique like flavor profile to it, and it was just more unique than the rest of them.
Yeah, it was very different than all the other apples we tried because it had such a unique characteristic of flavor for an apple. Because like most of them you have either sour, like the Granny Smith, or more sweet, kind of like your Honeycrisp and Gala apples. Envy one, that one was just completely different for an apple taste that we've tried from all of these. So I would say that one was the most surprising, and give it a go for trying for an apple because it's just quite different.
If we're being honest, the ones I probably wouldn't buy again would probably be, unless I'm baking something specifically, would be the Granny Smith. Then probably the Honey Crisp, just because it's too sweet. And then I agree kind of what you're saying with the Macintosh is like, I like it when it's really good and in season and you can get it local, but when it ships, it kind of loses and deteriorates pretty quickly. It can get kind of this like mealy and the texture starts to go bad.
Yeah, I would say kind of the ones I didn't like as much was definitely the Macintosh, which, as you just said, if you can get it in season, I'm sure it's a great apple, but shipping it when you're not in that area, it was one of the ones that was actually kind of not crisp and didn't have that really good flavor to it. So that one would be my least favorite one.
Yeah, and that one I also know from experience, like it bruises really easily, so it can be really hard to get a good one. That's typically why Macintoshes are used for juice, because they're so easy to squeeze the juice out.
My definite favorite one that I always like to gravitate towards is the Fuji apple. That one's just a solid eating apple. It's got a really nice juiciness to it and crisp. So yeah, that one's a really good one.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the ones here were pretty good. So if you see one that you haven't had before, it's worth giving it a go to see if you like different varieties.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the season now. It's like peak apple season, so go out and get some. Especially, I know we got these at the grocery store, but if you can get them, the quicker you can get them to being picked, they'll probably be a little bit better quality, a little bit sharper flavor as well.
Yeah, if you can find like a local apple orchard where you can go do some apple picking and find these different varieties that are local, because those are going to be your freshest varieties. Probably get them at the peak of ripeness.
And let us know down in the comments what's your favorite apple. Well, I hope you got something out of us trying all these different apples. There definitely was a couple surprises for us along the way, even though they are kind of relatively on the same kind of scale. So if you want to see any other videos where we try some stuff, check out the video on the screen right now. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And we'll see you again soon. Bye.